Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It's I think, my fourth or fifth time in Brighton. I arrived last year in September, and since then, in the TUC conference and GMB, many of these trade unions who have celebrated the Congress here in Brighton, and they invite, of course, the Cuban Solidarity campaign, and we have participated. And we love the city. You know, it's a very lovely city you have, and you live in, and so it's a pleasure for me to came back every time to Brighton. So today we are discussing a very important issue, the unilateral coercive measures, also known as sanctions. But you know, when we heard the word sanctions, we in at least in our country, we understand sanctions is because you did something wrong. So we defend with very strongly that unilateral coercive measures are exactly that. In the international law, they are recognized as a illegal measure taken by one state against other. So sanctions are a legal measure taken, and most of them approved by the Security Council, by the United Nations. But these other sanctions that we call illegal sanctions are the unilateral coercive measures. So, dear friends, we meet tonight at a moment of profound danger. We are 1 year into the second administration of Donald Trump. We have seen his promises of peace through strength translate for the Global South into a policy of war through hunger. The new imperialist order we are discussing tonight is not theoretical. For us in Cuba, it is not an academic concept debated in universities. It's a daily reality measured in blackouts, in shortages, and in the relentless pursuit of our financial strangulation. Tonight, I could read you a report full of statistics, our yearly report to the United Nations of the embargo impact on Cuba. But I realized that numbers do not bleed, numbers do not cry, numbers do not sit in the dark waiting for the power to return. So tonight I will tell you what it is work through hunger actually looks like in the daily life of a Cuban family in 2025. They tell you these sanctions, these unilateral coercive measures are targeted against the Cuban regime, but they lie. Let me tell you about the children at the William Soler Pediatric Cardiology Center in Havana. We have children born with heart defects who, to survive, they need a replacement heart valve. There are excellent biological valves available in the market that would allow a child to grow up, play sports, and have a normal life. But these valves are made in the United States, or they contain US patents, so the companies refuse to sell them to Cuba. And do you know what the alternative is? We are forced to implant them mechanical valves. And mechanical valves save the child's life, but at a terrible price. It means that a 7-year-old child must take strong anticoagulant drugs, blood thinner for the rest of their life. It means they cannot play football in the street with their friends. It means that a simple scraped knee is no longer a childhood accident, but a mortal danger for them. This is not sanctioning a government. This is sentencing a child to a life of fear. Let me tell you also about the children with leukemia. The drug oncaspar is the most effective treatment for children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It extends life and reduces the pain. But because the US company Enson owns the patent, we cannot buy this drug. We are forced to use older, less effective treatments that require painful injections and have lower survival rates. When a mother looks at a doctor in the eye and asks why her child cannot have the best medicine, the answer is not socialism. The answer is the blockade. Let me tell you about the Abel Santa Maria School for Blind Children. We want to buy Braille writers, the Perkins machines, so these children can learn to read and write. They are the standard tool for blind education worldwide, but we cannot buy them directly
because they are made in Massachusetts. So while we meet here tonight, a blind child in Havana is learning to read on a machine donated by solidarity activists, people like you in this very room, and delegations like the National Education Union and the Cuba Solidarity Campaign, who travel to Cuba carrying 10 or 20 of these machines in their luggage. But despite this heroism, there are still too many children in Cuba learning by poking holes in paper with a stylus dot by dot. We talk about the energy crisis in Cuba, but what does that mean? It means a mother in Santiago de Cuba, for example, stands over an empty gas canister because the ship carrying our fuel was threatened with sanctions and torn away from our port. She goes out to the patio and lights charcoal. In 2025, in our country, where thousands of doctors and scientists, mothers are forced to cook over open fires. Inside, her children are trying to do their homework by candlelight, and the air hangs heavy with the smell of charcoal smoke. That is the smell of the blockade. And this cruelty is not reserved for Cuba alone. This is the blueprint of the new order. We see the threat mounting against our sister nation, Venezuela. We must be clear. For us, the defendants of Venezuela is not a matter of whether you agree with President Maduro or not. Though Cuba recognizes its government as our main ally, it is a matter of sovereignty. It is a matter of self-determination. It is a matter of international law, and it is a matter of rejecting violence. We reject the threat of military intervention, and we defend the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. When the US threatens Venezuela, they are telling every nation in the global south, obey or we will turn off your lights. We stand with Venezuela, just as we stand with every country suffering under this illegal siege. And here in the UK, we thank the British government for the consistent vote in the United Nations calling for the end of the embargo. We are working hard to improve bilateral relations, yet we must be honest, the blockade impacts every aspect of our lives, including our relations with the UK due to extraterritorial effects. British banks often refuse lawful transactions not because of British law, but out of fear of American fines. This is the reality we must change. They tell us they sanction Cuba because of human rights, and if you want to see the reality of human rights, we look at Gaza. On January 10th of this year, Cuba filed its intervention at the International Court of Justice in the case against Israel. We invoked Article 63 because we know what genocide looks like. We told the court, when you cut off water, when you cut off fuel, when you deny anesthesia to children undergoing amputation, when you kill innocent people for sport, and when you torture and steal, that is genocide. It is a crime in Gaza, and it is a crime in Havana. And here is the irony. The countries that are actually starving children, the countries that are actually bombing hospitals, the United States and Israel, are the only ones that never faced these unilateral coercive measures or sanctions. They are the ones who deserve the judgment of the international community. The US blockade is the most flagrant violation of the human rights of the Cuban people, and keeping Cuba on the so-called list of state sponsors of terrorism is the biggest lie of the 21st century. Cuba sends doctors and teachers to the war, not bombs. We look for solidarity, not plunder. They want the darkness to break us. They want us to surrender, but they do not know the Cuban people. We are the people who eliminated illiteracy by the light of oil lamps. We are the people who developed our own vaccines during the COVID-19 and shared them with the world, even while we lacked syringes for our own clinics. We will not kneel, but we need you. We need you to tell these stories. We need you to expose the cruelty reality hidden behind the technical word sanctions. So we stand with Venezuela, stand with Palestine, and stand with Cuba. Thank you.